Well, good morning. Today we turn to Psalm 81, and I'd like to give you kind of an overview of it. It begins kind of happily. Sing for joy to God, our strength. Shout aloud to the God of Jacob. Begin the music, strike the timbrel, play the melodious harp and lyre, sound the ram's horn, and so on. So it begins with a call to worship. Then the psalmist says, I heard an unknown voice say, I removed the burden from their shoulders. Their hands were set free from the basket. In your distress, you called, and I rescued you. Obviously, we know who this voice is. It's the voice of God. I answered you out of a thundercloud. I tested you at the waters of Meribah. Hear me, my people, and I will warn you. If you would only listen to me, Israel. And then, interestingly, the psalmist begins to give us references from the Ten Commandments. Verse 9, you shall have no foreign god among you. You shall not worship any god other than me. And then what is often known as the preamble of the Ten Commandments comes next in verse 10. I am the Lord your God who brought you up out of Egypt. So it's a little bit of a reversal of the order that we see in Exodus when we learn the Ten Commandments. But then God makes some promises. Open wide your mouth and I will fill it. But my people would not listen to me. Israel would not submit to me. So I gave them over to their stubborn hearts to follow their own devices. It's really kind of a quick switch between these two moods of, if you would do this, I would bless you. Because then he goes in verse 13 to say, this is God again speaking, if my people would only listen to me, if Israel would only follow my ways, how quickly I would subdue their enemies and turn my hand against their foes. Those who hate the Lord would cringe before him, and their punishment would last forever. So God would defeat the enemies of God's people. And then finally, verse 16, but you would be fed with the finest of wheat. With honey from the rock, I would satisfy you. And as I think about this, and I think each of us who does these devotionals, we of course do some research, we read the psalm, we sit with it for a little while, but then we process it through our own grid, which is what we all do with the Word of God. We read it, we process it through our own lives. And as I read this and thought about it, it occurred to me that one of the things, there are not any patent, clear guarantees, if you live this way, God will do this for you. But there is this principle that if you live God's ways, God blesses us. And I think people sometimes forget this. I see all kinds of lives, and I can look at my own life, and we all, in this day and age, Christians like to be confessional. Oh, I fail here, I fail there, and we're all in this together. But I want to say that walking with God does create a number of blessings. And while my life has been marked by some pain also, I have to say that the journey I have had in walking with God, some days I'm reminded of what Brother Lawrence said in his classic book, The Practice of the Presence of God. He said, sometimes I would ask God to stay his hand because I just couldn't handle any more blessing. That's a paraphrase. Do you ever feel that? Do you ever feel God's blessing on your life? I find that there's a little knee-jerk reaction I have in life that I probably had for a few years. When something happens good, it could be a very little thing, I just say thank you. I just say thank you, thank you. And that, you could say, attitude of gratitude has become kind of natural to me. God has blessed you if you are a Christian, and he will continue in ways seen and unseen. So today as we read this, we learn the lesson, but my people would not listen to me. They would not submit to me. So I gave them over. So people who don't listen to God, there are consequences to that. If my people would only listen to me, how quickly I would subdue their enemies. You would be fed with the finest of wheat, and honey from the rock I would satisfy you with. So enjoy the blessing today of knowing that as a follower of God, he is preparing for you the finest of wheat. With honey from the rock I would satisfy you. Be satisfied in him today.